Chauvin, day 9 is today. Yesterday was day 8. We got to get caught up on both of these things. Yesterday was a little bit of a fiery morning. Judge Cahill started the session by ripping into the media. Apparently, the media has literally been zooming in on the attorney's notes to try to gain information about what their next move might be. Totally inappropriate. I mean, beyond inappropriate. Judge Cahill, not happy about it. Also, the media, now I didn't see this out there, but apparently this is happening around Minneapolis, around Minnesota. They're sort of detailing the security infrastructure, what is going on in the court building as it relates to security. Where are people going? What do they have to do? Where are they parking? Where are they walking from? And so you could see how this could be so problematic for jurors who are already in the middle of, I would say, the nation's most high-profile criminal case that we've had, I don't know, since OJ maybe? I mean, maybe Cosby's up there, but this is a very, very high-profile case. It captured the entire country. And so if you are a juror and you are concerned about your safety, the media exposing the security parameters is problematic, and the judge laces into the media at the start of the proceeding yesterday. So I'm going to show you that clip. Then yesterday, the judge, as a refresher, so much has been going on in this case, it's sort of hard to digest it all into just one little segment here, but we're going to try. And yesterday, the judge was also responding to the settlement. Remember, there was a $27 million settlement that the city council paid out to George Floyd and his family right in the middle of voir dire, which is jury selection. It's a very unusual time to do that. Something sort of seems awry with the timing, almost feels intentional, like they wanted to signal that they were leaning one way and they wanted to influence or impact the trial one way. That's just my opinion on it, but it certainly seemed provocative at the least and intentionally, I would say, problematic, let's say, at the worst, intentionally trying to manipulate the outcome of the trial. And so the judge, because this happened in the middle of jury selection, 7 jurors were already seated, and then this news of the settlement broke after they had been impaneled. And so the judge has now had to recall all of the 7 jurors and ask them what they knew about the settlement, if they had seen it. And remember, these people live there. They live in this vicinity. This is national news for me here in Arizona, probably national news for you. Even in other parts of the world, people are focused on this case. Many, many people from other parts of the world are focused. So if you are living there in Minnesota, you would imagine that even if a judge told you, hey, don't look at the news, don't try to find anything out about George Floyd, don't look into this, you are sort of halfway sequestered. You know, we're asking you to stay off the news, but if it's on the radio, if it is on the headline, if it's the front page of every single newspaper, even if you get on Facebook, you're going to see some information about it. You're going to see a headline, dang it, you know, I know I wasn't supposed to see that, but you did. And now that you've seen that there was a $27 million unanimous settlement, the biggest settlement in the history of this state, then how does that impact you? Does that make you impartial? Does that make you more biased, less biased? What does that do? And so the judge, unfortunately, had to excuse 2 jurors who inadvertently saw the headline. And so I'm going to show you those 2. So from yesterday, we've got a couple clips, one of Judge Cahill ripping into the media, and then 2 of the jurors who have been excused. Then we're going to talk about what happened today. 3 new jurors made it onto the panel, and then Judge Cahill dropped the mic as he was sort of blasting the prosecutor for kind of complaining a little bit about how the defense was working their case. So let's get into it. I've been talking enough. Here is Judge Cahill yesterday at the start of the morning going into the media pretty hard.
Now, it's been brought to the court's attention that the media it's been brought to the court's attention that the media has been reporting specific details, trying to look at counsel's the documents, computers, post-it notes on counsel tables. It's absolutely inappropriate. Any media who are present in this room will refrain from even attempting to look at what is on counsel table, either for the state or for the defense. Secondly, it has come to our attention that the media is reporting in detail the security arrangements on the 18th floor and other places. I find that completely irresponsible, that would be reported in the media. If that continues, the media is going to be excluded, and we're going to shut down the media center. So I hope everyone takes this to heart, that I consider this security issue very serious. And to report it out to the general public what our arrangements are is extremely irresponsible. and it will be met with sanctions if it continues. And I would hope that any media that posted such things online will immediately take them down. Failure to do so will result possibly in you being kicked out of the media center as well.
All right, so not happy about that. And it's good to see that from this judge. You know, this judge is pretty much unflappable, as we have been seeing thus far. He's been, thrown a lot of arguments from both sides, from the defense, from the prosecution. He's had some unruly jurors. He's dealing with a city council that's out of control. And he's been pretty level-headed until yesterday, and then again until today. He's getting agitated. He's getting irritated. And so people who, let's say, are not in the legal world, people who do not work in courts, might look at that, watch that clip, and go, oh, that's it? I mean, that's a tongue lashing? Like, that wasn't anything. Why didn't he arrest them and hold them in contempt of court? Well, what he's doing is he's giving them a warning. If it happens again, there's going to be sanctions, and there may be some additional penalties that flow from the gavel of this judge. But when you see a judge like this, I've been in front of enough of them that when you see somebody who's just super even-keeled, somebody who doesn't get ruffled, like this, just sort of going, all right, I'm going to turn this up from a level 5 to a level 6. That means they are very upset. They are not happy about this, nor should he be. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous the media would be doing this. The media already, I've got a lot of issues with them, and just generally speaking, in general, in life of American politics and everything else, I think they're reprehensible in many ways. But they're specifically bad in this case. They are now trying to, I would say, sort of elevate the worst parts of this case to help craft the narrative, and the judge is getting pretty tired of it, as we saw right there. So Judge Cahill, we're getting a little bit more spunk out of him as the trial continues to devolve. And next up, we're going to take a look at how he was questioning one juror. So we've got 2 clips from jurors. This first person was excused, and I want to just show you what this looks like and why this is so important. And think about how frustrating this is from the court's perspective, right? They've already bent over backwards to accommodate and make this work. We've got COVID restrictions. We've got threats of riots. They've got barricades, barbed wire. Everything is on lockdown, dealing with all sorts of abnormalities that you wouldn't ordinarily see in a regular criminal case. So this judge is trying to get this thing working. He finally, he's gone through like 80 jurors, gets 7 of them seated. Then the city council, for some asinine reason, drops the settlement right in the middle of the proceedings. And so this judge is going, all right, so I got to call them all back and ask them about the settlement again. We just got them seated, and I already got to ask them again. And so this judge does it with just extreme patience. So the first clip, you just heard him get agitated, but then he just turns it right back down. He just turns the volume back down to level 5, and he goes and he starts asking these jurors questions, and he's very conservative. As soon as they start hinting that maybe they can't be fair and impartial because of the $27 million settlement, he's just patient. He goes, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and excuse you. Thanks for being here, and not even upset about it. Whereas, I'm not sure that my poker face would be that good. Let's look at this next clip here from Judge Cahill.
Late last week, there was extensive media coverage about developments in a civil lawsuit between the city of Minneapolis and the family of George Floyd. Were you exposed to any of this coverage, directly, indirectly, inadvertently?
Yes, I did see the headline.
Okay, and what do you recall of the substance of the headline?
I believe the headline was the city of Minneapolis agreed to pay out the family of George Floyd, I want to say, to the tune of in the $20 million range.
Okay. Other than seeing the headline, did you read the article or just kind of leave it at that, knowing it's probably related?
Exactly. I left it at that, saw the headline, and saw that dollar amount as well.
And what effect, if any, do you think this might have on your ability to be impartial? When we accepted you as a juror, did it move you one direction or the other?
I would say especially that dollar amount was kind of shocking to me. That kind of sent a message that the city of Minneapolis felt that something was wrong, and they wanted to make it right to the tune of that dollar amount. I think in the headline, if it would have said $2,000 versus $20 million, that's a big change. So I think that sticker price obviously shocked me and kind of swayed me a little bit, yes.
Okay, and so you think I think you left the courtroom, everyone satisfied you could be fair and impartial. Do you think that viewing that headline has maybe moved you, kind of now that you know that that's the city of Minneapolis' opinion? Not that to be honest, not that we care about the city of Minneapolis' opinion, but if it has an effect on you, we appreciate the honest answer. Does it move you off the fair and impartial position?
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. I guess the trial still has the right to play out, right? It hasn't even started yet. So there are definitely a lot of facts to be heard through the trial. Again, I'm just trying to share with you what I know. My gut reaction to that, again, with the dollar amount being high.
Sure.
And I'm trying to leave that at that.
Okay. All right. Juror 20, I'm going to excuse you from the jury. We know that you did not seek out this information, but just on the possibility that you inadvertently saw it and it might affect your ability to be fair and impartial, we're going to exercise extreme caution here and excuse you from the jury. So thank you, though, for taking the time to come in. You are also excused from jury service completely. And so unless you get a summons in the future, you don't have to show up for our March 29th start date.
So very, very, very conservative. And I was a little bit surprised by that, actually. He didn't really say unequivocally that he could not be fair and impartial. He's kind of like, well, I saw it. I don't know. The trial hasn't started. What judge says, well, no, you saw it inadvertently and therefore you're gone. And that is pretty conservative, I would say. Just the fact that he saw it was sort of enough for him to be struck for cause. Whereas I think other judges might have said, well, okay, so you saw it. Can you set that aside and continue to be fair and impartial? Just like we saw in the original line of questioning. People would say, yeah, it was sort of the analog to the video. Many jurors saw George Floyd's video from the bystander on the side of the road. And we know that they saw it. They confirmed they saw it. They confirmed that they had an impact when they saw it, that this had led them to have certain opinions about what they think happened there. But the judge still said, okay, even though you saw it, can you set that aside? Can you continue to be fair and impartial? And many of the jurors said yes. So the judge could have done that again. He could have said, okay, so you did see the settlement, and knowing that that exists, can you continue to be fair and impartial? Can you continue to set that aside? And he didn't even go down that line of questioning. He just said, all right, well, you saw it. Can you still be fair and impartial? He kind of asked that preliminary question, and the guy said, well, I don't know, kind of waffled on it, but it wasn't an unequivocal no. It wasn't, I am certainly positive that I cannot be impartial anymore. Judge just said, well, that's kind of good enough, which is a very low standard to his credit. So he's got to go and pick another juror for that. And sometimes it'll take 10 to 20 jurors in order to get one. So he's making this trial go longer at his own expense in order to do the right thing. And so major kudos to Judge Cahill for that. Here's another clip of another juror who is also excused. And this is all from yesterday. Then we're going to change gears and talk about what happened today. Here's Cahill again.
A couple questions. Late last week, there was extensive media coverage about developments in a civil suit between the city of Minneapolis and the family of George Floyd. Were you inadvertently exposed to any coverage of this, directly, indirectly? Okay, you need to unmute. You can leave it unmuted, actually.
Okay. Yes, I was.
Okay, can you tell me what you heard?
Oh, about the settlement.
Okay, and what do you remember any specifics about it?
I mean, the quantity was a large amount of money.
Okay. Do you remember a specific amount or just that it was a large amount?
20, over 20 maybe.
Okay. How do you think that would affect your ability to be impartial in this case?
Oh, it will impact it a lot.
It will impact you a lot? Tell me about that.
So last time I was asked about my strong opinions against Chauvin. Clearly the city of Minneapolis has some strong opinions as well. And this just kind of confirms my opinion that I already had.
Okay. It is a separate case. Different parties, different legal issues won't be part of the evidence in this case, but we understand you were, and I'm sure you were inadvertently exposed. You didn't seek it out. We did accept you as a juror, but do you think now with this new information it would be hard to presume the defendant innocent, would hard to be impartial in this case?
I think it will be hard to be impartial.
All right. Then I'm going to excuse you from this case because of what was an unfortunate broadcast of certain details and the fact that I appreciate you being honest, though, in saying that it would affect your partiality. So it's not a failure. You're telling us the truth. So we appreciate that. So you are released from jury service.
Yeah, so good on that young man for being honest about it. Judge, again, didn't push him hard on it. So can you be fair and impartial, or would this impact you? Yes, it would. Okay, that's it, right? We're not going to inquire any further. And the judge also didn't give any of the attorneys any ability to go and rehabilitate those witnesses. So, if this were the original round of questioning, then the defense would have been asking him questions about the settlement. The prosecutor would have been asking him questions about it. And they could have tried to sort of, rehabilitate him so that he could continue to claim that he would be fair and impartial. Whether that's, accurate or not based on human psychology, you can go into that debate in a whole different, a spin-off and debate that to the end of the ages. But here, they just kind of are exercising a lot of caution, and the judge just, okay, well, a little bit of equivocation there. You are off. You've been excused. And so this is what the panel and the board looks like. Let's call it a board. We've got now 12 of the 14 jurors selected. So we've got 2 additional people that we're going to try to squeeze in tomorrow. We are going to go through these 3 new additions today. There are a lot of prosecutors now who have been sworn in as pro hoc vice. Mr. Blackwell was a couple days ago. There is a new person who I have not seen in court yet, so we have not added them yet. But the judge, there was an order that there was yet another prosecutor who got sworn in pro hoc vice to come in and work on the case. And so we're going to see them at some point, or maybe see some of their work product. The way that this is sort of structured right now is there's a couple prosecutors who are coming into court and doing most of the argument, and the other prosecutors are out there filing briefs and doing some of the background research to support the attorneys who are in court. And so we don't know if this new attorney, this new prosecutor, is somebody who's going to be in front of the camera or in the backgrounds, but as soon as that changes, we'll update this. And you can notice that this is changing pretty heavily in favor of the government. We have a lot of prosecutors who are on board versus Eric Nelson, kind of him and his assistant. And the judge makes note of that today. So I wanted to just point that out, what that scoreboard looks like, or what that the board looks like. So as of Tuesday, this is what the jury panel looked like. And we're going to notice that a couple people got removed, as we just heard. So I think it was number 4. It was somebody who was white. I know that. So it's either number 4 or number 1. I do not think it was number 1 because he was juror number 2. And when he got called in for questioning about the settlement, he seemed to be like he didn't even know about it, or it wasn't an issue to him. So I think he stayed on the panel. And I think number 4 was the person who was eliminated, along with number 6. I know for sure that he's not on the panel anymore, and so they get struck through. And what I did is I moved all of the other jurors here up into their spots. So we're going to put number 5 at number 4, number 7 at number 6, and we're going to move 8 and 9 up. And so it's going to look like this. So now we're back to 7, and then that is with the 2 removed. And then yesterday we added numbers 8 and number 9. And so yesterday, the number 8 is a black male. He said no to defunding the police. And number 9 is a multiracial female who is in her 40s. She's a consultant, does some corporate consulting. She's married with a son, and she says that settlement does not equal guilt. So these were the 2 new people who were added yesterday. And then today we're adding 10, 11, and 12. And so let's flesh out who these people are. Number 1, we have, heading into Thursday's proceedings, 9 jurors had been selected to determine whether Chauvin caused the death of Floyd. The 10th juror, this person here, is a nurse. She lives in Edina, assured the court that she could judge the evidence fairly despite having seen portions of the video and hearing about the settlement. Attorneys for both sides focus strongly on her 27 years of nursing in light of the trial, likely touching on how police dealt with Floyd becoming unresponsive during his arrest and connection of drug use to his death. So she's a nurse, and we're going to see a lot of medical testimony in this trial. We're going to determine whether or not the drugs killed George Floyd, whether Chauvin's knee on the neck killed George Floyd, whether it was a combination of the 2 of it, whether they should have done something differently in order to save his life. And so she's a nurse. She's somebody with a lot of practical hands-on experience in this field. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot of questions about this. And I've detailed this before on the show. I think we talked about it on Clubhouse, may have talked about it when we were talking with Robert Barnes about whether we want certain individuals from certain professions on a jury. So this is a lot of the time why lawyers are not on juries, because people who are also on the jury might look to the lawyer for guidance, for answers. They'll say, oh, well, we don't know how to handle this thing that's in front of us. This is a big, tall order. We got to determine whether somebody's innocent or guilty. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of pressure here. Is there anybody here who knows how this works? Oh yeah, there's a lawyer. And so the danger there is that other jurors will sort of lean on the lawyer, and they will have undue influence over the deliberations. Here, same issue. What if we're talking about a lot of, toxicology reports, cardiac arrests, pulmonary, this, that, and the other? Are the jurors going to go and lean on this nurse for answers? Well, it came up today. The woman, who is white, said her personal training would affect how she would look at the evidence. All right. Said, we all use our life experiences to make judgments, she said, which for her, duties include resuscitating patients in urgent situations and dispensing opiates while on the job. The judge interjected and pointed out that she can't be an expert witness in the jury room, and she agreed that would be wrong. So she cannot go and sort of claim special privileges when she's in there. Prosecutor Steve Schleicher quizzed the nurse about drug addiction, and so you can see this from this line of questioning. The prosecution is really going to be hitting up this addiction component. She said she has seen patients who are hooked on opiates, and she doesn't believe any particular segment of the population is more susceptible than another. It can be anybody, she said. And I would agree with her on that. That's my experience. Drugs are very indiscriminatory, especially the opiates and some of the more hard drugs. Kind of hits everybody across the board, which is just unfortunate. And so, as I mentioned, Prosecutor Steve Schleicher, they're really hitting this drug addiction thing. You know, they're going to say that George Floyd had the drugs in his system because he was an addict. He was addicted to fentanyl, and that's why the 11 nanograms per milliliter didn't kill him, because he used so much of it that that amount was normal for him. While that would kill you or me, not somebody who uses it regularly, he was an addict, but that didn't mean he deserved to die. That didn't mean that Chauvin could still sort of pin him to the ground with a knee on the neck and extinguish his life from him just because he was an addict. And so, you know, this is something that's very important in all criminal law. You deal with a lot of bad facts. Law in general. There are bad facts in all cases. And so when people come to our office and they say, you know, gosh, I actually did that. What can you do to help me? And all of these things. Sometimes we have good facts. Sometimes we have bad facts, and we just have to deal with those things. Here, the government has a pretty bad fact. It was a toxicology report that George Floyd had 11 nanograms per milliliter in his blood of fentanyl, which is enough, according to many studies, to cause people to die. And the government has to deal with that. How are they going to do that? Well, you can see the theme that's already developing. This is why the prosecutor is asking the jurors about this. What's your opinion on addiction? And sort of trying to gauge how they would respond to that. Do they think that all addicts are, you know, morally wretched people who don't deserve any compassion, that they should just sort of be thrown out of society? There's still a lot of people who think that way. They think alcoholics and drug dealers are drug addicts and sort of the dregs of society, whereas other people might say, no, it's a medical problem. It's an addiction. It's something that needs treatment. It's something that needs rehabilitation. And so you can sort of pin people down. Where on that spectrum are they? Where do they fall? And Prosecutor Steve Schleicher was doing that. Certainly, he wouldn't want anybody on the jury who said something like, well, anybody who uses drugs is a drug addict and they get what's coming to them. If that is somebody's perspective on drugs, that's not a good juror for the government. Here, she says, well, no, I mean, anybody can be susceptible to this stuff. I'm not trying, it sounds like she's sort of understanding about addiction and a little bit more compassionate. And so she may buy into the government's argument more so than somebody who would be on the other end of that spectrum. So she is now on the panel. We also have another African-American woman. The day's second new juror is a grandmother and a retired marketing professional who volunteers helping children in need with their homework. Sounds like just an outstanding woman. She said she started watching the video of Floyd's arrest, but stopped after 4 to 5 minutes because it wasn't something that I needed to see, as I shut things off, things I see in the news. The woman, who is black, said she has not formed opinions about either Chauvin or Floyd and was firm in saying news of the settlement would not affect her commitment to being an objective juror. As with many jury candidates, the woman was asked about her impression of Black Lives Matter. She responded, quote, I am black and my life matters. She disclosed that she has a relative who is on the Minneapolis police force, but they have not spoken about this case or any experiences in law enforcement. The woman did not consider herself particularly close to the relative, yet added, I am proud of my relative for standing up and being a police officer. So you kind of got, an interesting dynamic here. You've got somebody who is African-American that as we know, the prosecution, I think, is really in favor of them being on the jury. They were challenging the defense striking anybody who had any background of minority status, trying to say that they were doing that on a racial bias. And so the government wants African Americans on the panel because George Floyd was African American, and sort of the racial procedure that everybody is thinking is sort of common understanding is that they're going to be able to identify more with George Floyd than a white person would. They'd be more likely to convict Derek Chauvin for killing somebody who is a part of their community. And so here, she kind of has connections to law enforcement, which the government doesn't like, but she's also African-American, which the government does like. And so no peremptory strikes were taken out by the prosecution, none by the defense. And so she is also on the panel. She's the second juror that was added today. Lastly, our third juror on the panel is a suburban woman who works in the insurance industry. Like others, she has viewed the bystander video and was aware of the settlement, but said those would not be factors in her maintaining fairness and objectivity as a juror. The woman wrote in her juror questionnaire months ago that she didn't believe Floyd deserved to die and police didn't need to use excessive force. However, she continued, Floyd was not completely innocent. She said she has generally positive views of police and opposes any defunding of their departments, yet also believes people of other races get treated unfairly by law enforcement. Another line of questioning for her dealt with drug and alcohol addiction. As we can see, the prosecution is asking this, a topic the nurse put on the jury earlier Thursday also addressed. This juror said, I understand there are people that struggle with addiction. That doesn't make them a bad person. If someone uses drugs, I don't think there should be ramifications for that. So on that spectrum of drug use, she's on the more compassionate side. She's not going to hear evidence that George Floyd had several drugs in his toxicology report and judge him unfavorably accordingly. Says, look, I don't think there should be ramifications for that. I know people struggle with addiction. She's viewing it more compassionately. And so even though she has some statements here that say, well, people of other races get treated unfairly, which may sort of hurt the defense, she also says she's got generally positive views of the police, which Derek Chauvin is. And so she's sort of looking at him through a light, maybe with a little bit of favor in that direction. The glass is half full rather than half empty, according to her view of the police, let's put it that way. And so kind of another one that's a little bit tricky to figure out where she's ultimately going to end up. And she's on the panel, so we'll see where that goes. Now, we're going to do a quick summation of this. We're going to note here that the Star Tribune posted that through Thursday, the jury consists of 6 people of color, 6 people who are white, more specifically, 1 multiracial woman in her 20s, 1 multiracial woman in her 40s, 2 black men in their 30s, 1 black man in his 40s, 1 black woman in her 60s, a white woman in her 40s, 3 white women in their 50s, a white man in his 20s, and a white man in his 30s. So they did a nice summation for us. These are what the emojis look like. So this is what the panel is looking like right now. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people of color, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white individuals, and we've got 2 more left. And so pretty even panel. And so my thought was, Robert Barnes actually brought this up on our live stream yesterday, saying that the jury is looking much more diverse than even the city itself or even the state itself, which I thought was a very interesting concept. So I looked it up. And here on the United States Census Bureau, not the Senate, the U.S. Census Bureau. This is from Minneapolis. This is from the census.gov website. And you can see here that in Minnesota, race and Hispanic origin, white alone is 83% of the population. Black or African American, 7%. American Indian, 1%, Asian, 5%, and Hispanic, 5%. 2 or more races are sort of broken down. Native Hawaiian, 0.1%. So generally speaking, we've got 83% white and we'll say 17% of a different demographic. And this is a 50-50 panel. So it's significantly more diverse than the state of Minnesota, which is interesting. Not a bad thing, not a good thing, just interesting. So if the trend sort of continues, if we have numbers 13 and 14, maybe split it, it might be lopsided one way or the other, but it's pretty dang close to even. So it'll be very interesting to see how many people are claiming racism one way or the other after this trial is over. Here it is, plotted out on a chart. This is the emoji chart that we have. So you can see here the last 3, we have a white female in her 50s who's a nurse. Life experience as a nurse matters, she says. She's not an expert witness, as we know. She's not going to try to pretend to be one. We also have number 11, a black female in her 60s. She's retired, marketing professional. She turned off the Floyd video because she couldn't watch it. Did say that she has some positive thoughts on BLM and has a police relative. Number 12, don't know her age yet because she just got signed up here at the end of the day, right before I came on the program. So I don't know her age yet, but she's white, female. It says Floyd not completely innocent, but excessive force is also bad. So we're getting close on this jury stuff, which is good because tomorrow is Friday. Hopefully we can close this out and then they'll have a little bit of time until the trial starts on the 29th. But today I wanted to show you the final few minutes of court today. Very explosive a little bit, and I want to frame it out. Judge Cahill was not happy about what's going on here. So yesterday and maybe earlier today, there's a lot of conversation about some of the outstanding issues that need to be settled in court. One of the big ones is, as a result of the settlement being passed by the city council, one of the things that the defense attorney, Eric Nelson, is communicating about, he's saying, we need a change of venue. We need a continuance. We need a change of venue because this is so improper. The entire city is now biased against Derek Chauvin based on the conduct of the city council, releasing the settlement agreement right in the middle of voir dire, which is jury selection. I think he's got a very good point there. And as this has been going on, he's been bringing up other issues, saying things like there are press conferences. Oh, the city is also doing this. They're also holding a press conference. Oh, some news reporting company said that somebody who is a part of the city council or somebody who's a government official or something and so on made a statement about this trial or discussed George Floyd in some capacity, discussed Derek Chauvin in some venue. And he's trying to make the claim that he's seeing a pattern of malfeasance. He's seeing the city not just sort of inadvertently release a settlement agreement in the middle of jury selection and just go, oh, well, oh gosh, we are just so silly us. We kind of biffed that one, didn't we? But that was our mistake. It was an honest mistake. We're sorry. Now, Eric Nelson is saying, no, this is orchestrated. He's saying the city is repeatedly getting really close to this line where it's becoming improper. In other words, we can't have a trial here because the city itself is hostile to our client. And he's trying to show the pattern by showing different news sources, different articles. The whole city's talking about this case, apparently. And so as this is all proceeding, as they're going through jury selection, Eric Nelson, the defense lawyer, is calling to the court's attention certain issues. He's saying, look, this person talked about this. They're a part of the city. They're showing bias and prejudice towards our side. And again, and again, and again. And so the prosecutor here, now Steve Schleicher, he's unhappy with this. He certainly does not want the venue to change. He wants it right there in the middle where it happened because of a lot of different reasons. You can speculate about that. Maybe he thinks it's favorable for his verdict. Maybe he thinks the demographics are better. Maybe he thinks that the public pressure will help sway people to his line of thinking. Who knows? Could be many different reasons why, but he does not want it to leave. And so Eric Nelson is continually bringing up these issues. City council's doing this, government officials doing that, mayor's doing whatever. And so the prosecutor comes out in front of court today at the very end and says, listen, Judge, we got to get a little bit clearer with the record here, okay? The defense attorney, Eric, over there is just sort of shooting from the hip. He's just kind of coming off the cuff. He's saying, well, this city council member did this and this judge did that or this mayor did whatever. And he goes, that's not good enough. We need stronger records. We need to go in and submit an offer of proof. He can't just sit there and just sort of run his mouth is really what he's saying. He can't just sort of, come off the cuff and point these things out to the court. He needs to go through a formal procedure. He needs to submit a motion. He needs to submit a notice. He needs to document this because right now he's being too loose. Judge is not happy about that. So the clip that I'm going to show you is the prosecutor. He's going on for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then he's sort of reiterating this point that Eric Nelson keeps saying things that are not being documented to the prosecutor's liking, not to the judge's liking. The judge hasn't issued any ruling or any order about how this stuff should be communicated to the court. But what really in my mind is happening is the prosecutor really wants to shut him up, essentially. He's asking the court to say, hey, I don't like how he's bringing this to the court's attention, so please tell him to stop that. Goes on for about a few minutes, and we're going to pick this up at the tail end where he's sort of coming off of his argument, saying that there needs to be more evidence presented because it needs to have more context, and he can't just sort of shoot from the hip and off the cuff. And the judge cuts him off and then goes into his little explanation and then storms off the bench. It's a good one. Let's take a look here. Here is Judge Cahill.
And then I would also ask, Your Honor, again, just emphasizing the importance of maintaining an accurate record. To the extent that the court is going to be relying on anything. I mean, off-the-cuff comments about something that someone may have reported in the media, that's really third-hand information. I think that if counsel is going to be making factual assertions, they need to be made as either a formal offer of proof or a declaration with supporting exhibits attached. And I don't think that the court has limited in any way defense counsel's ability to file articles, newspaper articles, or whatever kind of accounts he thinks is going to support his motion. But just simply in the middle of proceedings saying, hey, I heard that the city council is talking about this case again, without the context in which it's being spoken about.
Let's just stop right there. As an officer of the court, Mr. Nelson was noting something that was in progress almost. He has the right to do that. You have a right to criticize it as not being sufficiently supported by declarations and affidavits. My response to his declaration was to say it was noted, nothing more, no finding. And I would expect that he follows it up with perhaps some filings. I cannot expect Mr. Nelson to step out of these proceedings, where we've been in session since 8:30 this morning, to file affidavits to add to his record on a motion I'm going to be reading about and deciding tonight for tomorrow morning. I don't think it's fair to criticize either side. Either side. You should not be criticizing each other for noting for the record things that are happening in an emergent manner. It should be followed up. I agree with it. Good record is much better. But for an officer of the court to make a notation, he's entitled to do that. Whether he wants to just rest on that is fine. I think your answer to give me that transcript and a URL to listen to is also very appropriate, very important for me to look at these questions. But let's recognize the fact that the state has a lot of lawyers on this case who can sit outside this courtroom and start grinding out things. Mr. Nelson does not. He does not have the same level of support. How many lawyers now are admitted pro hoc BJ and are working for the state on this case so far, Mr. Slisher? Is it 10, 12?
I don't have that number, Your Honor, but I do know that the Police Federation, the union, is funding the defendant's defense, and they have...
Let's not talk about that. We're not talking about how things are funded. I'm just saying, I can understand why what I'm saying is, I can understand why the state is able to produce affidavits and memos so quickly, because there are a lot of lawyers working outside this courtroom. I can't expect that Mr. Nelson would walk in this afternoon with affidavits when we've been in jury selection all day. And I think what we're getting into is criticizing each other's performance. Let's not do that. You do your own performance, you let the court evaluate whether it's enough. We're going to go forward, make your record, make it as good as you want to make it. I'll decide based on the record that's before me, and if it's not good enough, I'll say so. And to be honest, I'm not going to talk about this second press conference. I'm not going to talk about it. Make your submissions. I prefer now they be in writing, and we stop talking about it. I've asked Minneapolis to stop talking about it. They keep talking about it. We keep talking about it. Everybody just stop talking about it. Let me decide what the ramifications are. Are we clear on this? We're adjourned for the day. Submit your additional submissions in writing. Not oral. Thank you. 8:15.
Mic drop off the bench. Get it together. See you tomorrow morning at 8:15. Just gets off the bench. Yeah, typically judges don't do that. When you see them do the spin around, the boom, and they're off. They're not happy. He's not happy about it, and nor should he be. And this is pretty typical from prosecutors. They like to come out there. They've got all the resources in the world. They've got massive law enforcement budgets. They have hundreds of employees in their prosecution offices. This team, as we have seen, is flying in private lawyers from all over the country, from Yale and Harvard and all these different massive law firms. Are all flying in there to join the team, and they're all sitting outside the courtroom just, going hard on all these different motions. Eric Nelson sitting in there with Derek Chauvin just going, oh, okay, we're going to get up there and we're going to argue whatever we can argue. And you can see here the government is using different prosecutors for different areas. They have like one prosecutor for each different defense expert for all the different motions that are coming up. They're segmenting the case so that one person can work on one issue and go and just crush it with that line of questioning. Eric Nelson is sort of having to, fly around all over the place and just tread water. Now, he's doing a great job because he's used to this stuff. This is just how life is for defense attorneys. It's always a David versus Goliath situation. And as you can see here, the prosecutor comes back out and says, oh yeah, well, he's being funded by the police unions, which I detest, by the way. And that's fine. But the judge says, listen, we're not talking about funding here. Okay. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you and how you're conducting yourself in this courtroom. Mr. Prosecutor, if you're not happy about how he's making a record, well, you're entitled to correct the record or make a record, but don't come in here and cry to daddy and say, Dad, he's not doing by the rules. He's not playing fair, and I want you to go and correct him. The judge said, you're a grown-ass man. Pull it together. If you don't like what he's saying, make the record clear, and I'm going to be the one who judges it. Okay, Eric Nelson's doing what he can. These are emerging issues. The city council keeps talking about this stuff. I'm tired of talking about it. You're tired of talking about it. So submit your briefs. I'm going to rule on them tomorrow morning, and have a good night. Boom, mic drop, I'm out of here. And I got to tell you, I absolutely think this is just outstanding. Outstanding. I mean, this judge is really fair. Prosecutors do this all the time. They complain all the time about a bunch of nonsense. And this judge knows that, practically speaking, this is how a trial works. And I think it's very, very disingenuous of the prosecutor to say, oh, you really want Eric Nelson to bring out all of these issues on the fly? You want him to sort of ask the judge for a break? so that he can go out there and write an affidavit or submit a notice or file a written motion. You know how long this trial would take? And so the prosecutor is trying to chill that speech. They're trying to shut him up. If the judge would have come out, and the judge easily could have said, hey, Mr. Nelson, you know, he's right. We got to be very careful with our language. This is a volatile trial, and we need everybody to just make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And so I'm going to ask you to refrain from bringing this stuff up to our attention unless it is a formal written motion. If it is a formal document, then we'll consider it. And if he would have done that, which a lot of judges would have, then Eric Nelson would have had his hands tied behind his back. He wouldn't have been able to call any of this stuff out because he can't be in two places at once. He's in court. They're trying to do jury selection. They're trying to move this thing down the road. And if he would have had to have taken a break at every single time that he got some news about something that the stupid city was doing in order to derail the trial, then the whole trial would be derailed because he would have to step out of court in order to go submit those documents. And the judge knows that. And this judge, fortunately, saw through it. He said, look, Mr. Prosecutor, quit your crying. Okay, make your record. Stop criticizing him. Stop trying to tell dad how to treat the other child. I'm running the courtroom, and that's it. Deal with it. And so, I mean, major kudos to this judge, somebody who is fair. And I think what the prosecution was trying to do is very transparent. They were trying to chill Mr. Nelson's ability to represent his client by taking one of the tools away from him that he would have submitted in order to support the motion for the change of venue. It's underhanded. This judge called him out on it, and it's not a good look for the government. Not good. And hopefully they take that little bit of a backhand and pull it together for tomorrow. Let's go over to the questions here from locals. What's for locals? Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Sorry, I was reading the question to myself and not to you. Liberty or Death says the media airing details of security is the same as Geraldo airing the troop movements that led to 2 soldiers being injured in the Gulf War. How long do you think we will have actual journalism again? I think journalism is just, I mean, as an institution, I think it's probably on the way out. You have a lot more people, I think, who are doing, I mean, there's always going to be journalism, but I think traditional journalism is being just edged out by independent journalism. I mean, look at this Substack versus, New York Times, for example. People are going to Substack. I subscribe to a lot of people over on Substack. Well, not a lot, a handful of people over there. And it's better than anything you get elsewhere. And so they're all freaking out about it. They're all trying to stay relevant. And I personally will not be missing them when the time comes. Next up, we've got Build a Wall says, assistant is Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison is Attorney General. Okay, so the assistant is Keith. Oh, he's one of the assistants. Oh, okay. Oh, no kidding. I didn't even realize that. Okay, Keith Ellison is the Attorney General. All right, good. Thank you for that correction. I had not heard him speak in court. I just saw him stand up and introduce himself on the I think it was the first day, just kind of stand up and nod. So I hadn't heard him speak. So, all right, thank you for that. We'll make that correction. And I appreciate that, by the way. There are things that I'm missing on here. I've got, I'm doing my best, but there are things that I'm going to be missing. So if you see it, if you're paying attention to this and you see any corrections or any errors, especially in the jury panel, if you find other news sources that give us some details where we can fill in some of the gaps on our demographics or our professions or age or any of that stuff, please feel free to send that over to me. I'm going to be updating this. I can't read everything. Obviously, I'm not there. I am pulling from the Star Tribune. And so if they are off or you have better information from somewhere else, I would appreciate you sending that over. So Liberty or Death says, I have seen defendants with a number of co-counsel, but is this normal to have so many prosecutors? Yeah, it's a good question. This is not normal, but nothing about this trial is normal. I mean, this is all kind of a first impression. This is the first time that I've ever seen a trial that is this transparent with all the documents publicly available. Everything is being live streamed, everything from opening announcements to the close, the end of the day. It's all available. And this is also something where security is beefed up. We've got a lot of very complicated issues. The entire country is focused on this. So I know it's not normal, but it's also not surprising. They have a lot invested in this case, so they're going to be spending a lot of resources in order to beef that up a bit. Jack Elia in the house says, I've been on a jury where the instructions of the judge to guide deliberations were ignored in favor of personal experience and political leanings of most of the members. So should an actual So should an actuary be the foreman controlling authority of a jury determining the amount, if any, of compensation the victim of an accident should receive concerning a life-changing injury? So, should an actuary be the foreman controlling authority of a jury determining the amount, if any, of compensation? Well, that sounds like it's a civil law question. I can't really opine on that. I've never done a civil jury trial. I've never done really even a litigated car accident case. I just haven't been in that field. But certainly, personal experience should not displace the jury instructions and the law. If the law says what the law is, then the jurors don't get to throw that out in favor of their personal opinions. That's not appropriate at all in criminal law or civil law. Sliding Edge says, genuinely appreciate you speaking with Barnes and Frey yesterday. Appreciate your efforts. Question asked yesterday. Any more discussion about settlement resulting in mistrial? And yeah, it's a good question, Sliding Edge. I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so is because they're doing basically everything that they can to keep that out of the formal proceeding. And so I'm not sure that a court is going to grant a mistrial just for that basis. A mistrial is typically something that happens in the middle of the trial or leading up to it, or something procedurally sort of within the bubble of the trial. Here, the judge is doing everything possible to make sure that the settlement is kept outside before the trial starts. And so I'm not sure that the settlement itself would justify a mistrial just due to the fact that they released it. Now, if they do something else, let's say in the middle of the trial, that might be more, that rattled the existing jurors, then that might be something that would justify that. But at this point in time, I just don't see that. It's a huge problem. The judge is obviously not happy about it. That's why they got rid of the 2 jurors. If they were not able to get rid of the 2 jurors because they had already been impaneled, then yeah, that might have been a mistrial. But the judge is able to correct for this problem in court, and so I'm not seeing that there's a potential for a mistrial, but it's a good question. News Now, Wyoming, last question on this segment says, I have said from the beginning of jury selection that I don't think he can get a fair trial anywhere in Minnesota, but certainly can't receive one in Minneapolis. I want the guy found guilty, but I like our civil rights more. It's a great point, and it's a great perspective, News Now. I am of the same mindset. I am not a fan of Derek Chauvin. I'm not a fan of the police, right? My whole job is going against the police. So I sort of see this, I'm sort of predisposed to not identifying with Derek Chauvin. I am, however, very identifiable with the presumption of innocence, due process, right to counsel, right to a fair and free trial, something that involves impartial jurors without any malfeasance from the government. I don't want, multiple different bureaucracies dumping on somebody. I don't like the media pre-convicting people, and it's messy. And so I think that those things are more important than any particular criminal defendant. We have to remember the values that make up the justice system, the foundation of the justice system, I think are more important than any one prosecutor, any one judge, any one defendant. And we got to make sure that those things are upheld. And that's really my big interest in the Chauvin case. We'll see where it goes. All right, so that's it for Derek Chauvin. Explosive last couple of days from a lawyer's opinion. If you're not a lawyer, you may look at this, you go, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. But I might even agree. I might even agree with you on some days. But this has been very, very, very fiery over these last few days, and so we'll see where that goes. One of the things you have to consider is this a judge who's just getting irritable with the government? They're not going to like that if that is the case. And I don't think that this judge is somebody who's going to try to punish the government because he's agitated with them. But it's certainly, he's only human. And if he's going to be agitated with the prosecutor for 4 weeks in the middle of a trial, they may lose some objections. They may lose some, emotions that they need to win in order to be successful in the case. And you don't want an irritable judge. They're not doing anything to prevent that from happening. So, all right. So that's Derek Chauvin.